We want to welcome our candidates for position number 2, the Vancouver City Council. We appreciate your being here and your courage in running for office to participate in our community. We're going to have a 1-minute opening, and then I will ask a series of questions, and you will have 1.5 minutes to answer. You'll be given a 30-minute warning, but don't let that throw you off. Finish your thought, finish your sentence. It just is just a kind of a guide so you can manage your time there. As usual, there'll be no applause or comments from the audience. We'll start with Ms. Topper for a 1-minute opening.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to have public dialogue and give everyone an opportunity to get to know your candidates. I'm Alicia Topper, current Vancouver City Council member in position 2. I was elected in November of 2013, so I'm coming upon my 4th year in office, and it has been a true honor serving as your Vancouver City Council member. I'm a native to the Pacific Northwest. My husband Ryan and I own a home in the Hauk neighborhood. We've been married for 11 years, and I graduated from Battleground High School and went to Washington State University in Pullman, earned 2 degrees, one in psychology and one in foreign language and literatures, earned my master's degree at Portland State, and have been giving back to my community ever since. I've been intimately involved in our nonprofit community since coming back home from Pullman, and also working very hard on issues around affordable housing and the homelessness, helping to create economic opportunities and jobs for people here in our community, and also working to strengthen the public safety across our city. So I would be honored to represent you and look forward to visiting more tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Forsman, your 1-minute opening.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name, again, is Justin Forsman, and I've been in the area my whole life. I was pretty much born and raised in Damascus on a 27-acre farm and have lived here in Vancouver since I was about 10 years old now. And I was a ward of the state when I was 12, and I was in the system since I was 18. And I have experienced many hardships in my life, being homeless as a juvenile, being homeless as an adult, and I've pretty much seen both sides of the spectrum. I can bring a lot of experience, life experiences, and also some experiences from my bright side of my future that's looking forward. Basically, I have a limited government perspective, and I want to see that taxes are not increased. I want to see that the traffic and congestion is fixed. I'd like to see a 3rd bridge. I'm very passionate about getting the homeless off the streets. As I mentioned, I've experienced it, and I'd like to be your city council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our first question will begin with Mr. Forsman. How well does the City of Vancouver support the development of small businesses, and what more could be done?
Well, from what I've heard from members in the community, people that have businesses, is that it's very restricting. It's very hard for people to start up a business. There's a lot of restrictions, a lot of things that stop people from, well, I had a friend of mine that had a food cart, and he had got everything set up, and it turned out that it was too expensive to get the food cart going, so he had to cash that idea and have a little tent. And he was still somewhat successful, but it really hurt his business starting up. And another friend of mine buys and sells houses, and the city is so burdensome, coming in and having to basically make him redo stairs because they're off by 1 centimeter of an inch. And it just seems like if we were easier on businesses, that more businesses would come here. And so I would like to see tax incentives to businesses that hire locally, people that hire maybe those less fortunate, and just tax incentives in general. I think we put a lot of burden on these businesses, and if we want more jobs and we want the economy here to thrive, then we need to be easier on our local businesses.
Thank you. Ms. Topper, the same question. How well does the City of Vancouver support the development of small businesses, and what more could be done?
So currently, the City of Vancouver puts our focus into partnerships. We work with other nonprofit organizations and agencies that their primary goal and mission is to support both small businesses and to drive more entrepreneurial-focused business sectors here to Vancouver. So currently, we partner with the Vancouver's Downtown Association, who's focused in our downtown core to revitalize that corridor. We're currently a partner and supporter and have members of our council serve on the Columbia River Economic Development Council. They're more regionally focused on bringing outside companies to our city to locate both in industrial and light industrial and commercial areas. That's one way we got Banfield to locate here, and we brought hundreds of great paying jobs to our city. So we're doing what we can on only 4% of our entire city budget, which is focused towards economic development. Yes, we could do more. We can always do more. And I believe that focus can be looking towards state grants that will give us an opportunity to leverage funding here in our own community, as well as federal opportunities that may come available in the future. And we'll do that by making sure that our legislative agenda is prioritizing small business development and opportunities. I don't believe that the only way to promote and to increase the number of small businesses and jobs and their growth rate is through incentives. I think that we can create additional infrastructure and support like we do with our small business development. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Your next question, we'll start with Ms. Topper. Beyond a new I-5 bridge, what should be the next major transportation project for the city and why?
So the transportation infrastructure system, and I learned this as a new city council member, all streets within the city limits are not necessarily the priority or responsibility of that municipality, the city. You also have state roads. And so one road that I know that I would be very focused on supporting and helping to write grants for is I-14. You may have read in the paper recently the congestion east and west during peak transportation hours is beginning to choke our infrastructure. And what's happening both along I-5 and I-14 are people trying to bypass the highways. I-14, for example, people are spilling over onto Evergreen Highway. And that is creating a livability issue for people who have homes along that corridor. I also would look at our transportation study that we just completed, the West Side Mobility Study, and look at a lot of the recommendations there. Fruit Valley Road is one that's being inundated with truck traffic on the north and south corridor because people are bypassing, truckers specifically, are bypassing I-5 and starting to go through neighborhoods and right past Fruit Valley Elementary School. So I would be focusing on those areas that are getting a more detrimental impact because of diverting traffic. And we have other projects across the city, and we're constantly putting effort and plans into those projects.
Thank you. Mr. Forsman, the same question. Beyond a new I-5 bridge, what should be the next major transportation project for the city and why?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to see some lane expansion. As dependability on our roads increases, lane expansion is needed. So where we can expand lanes, I would like to see that. I'd also like to see better timed traffic signals. Too long and too often I sit at lights where nobody's there, nobody's going by, and yet it's a green light, and I have to sit there for quite a while, wasting gas. Another thing about the lights I'd like to see fixed is more flashing yellows, so people don't have to sit at these lights and waste their gas. Beyond the I-5 bridge, I'd like to see proposals made for a new bridge and possibly a new highway or interstate that would connect to this. And those are some things that I'm focused on. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll start with you, Mr. Forsman, for the next question. The city is considering regulations for parking and storing boats and RVs. What would your recommendation be?
Well, I do know that a lot of times these RVs are basically occupied by people that are homeless or low income. And so when we tow these motorhomes, we put these people on the street. So I'd like to see an area where that they can park, maybe a place allocated for them where they can be, where they're not eyesores to the community. Because there's people that I work with actually that live in RVs. So it's something that I know that the cops pretty much every day tell you, oh, you got to move. By midnight, you have to find a new location. And if people aren't there, sometimes they come back and their RV's not there. So I'd like to see some areas where they can go and park. And let's see. For parking, I'd like to see, more areas for us to park downtown. Everywhere you pretty much go, there's meters, and there's a lot of revenue that's being generated. So I'd like to see some of that allocated towards making it more easier for us to park within the city, especially downtown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Topper, thanks. The same question. The city is considering regulations for parking and storing boats and RVs. What would your recommendation be?
So recreational vehicles and boats are large vehicles, and the City Council has had quite a bit of conversation regarding this policy. And ultimately, no street parking for boats or RVs. I think that is going to impact neighborhoods, and potentially it could impact the value of homes within that neighborhood. If an RV or boat is parked in someone's driveway, it should not be impeding on sidewalks. It shouldn't overhang into streets. So if your lot size is too small to accommodate an RV, then you should not be parking it there. You should be parking it in a storage area, including boats. We had a discussion about whether it should have a setback requirement, meaning should the RV be behind the house? Should it be parked to the side? My thought is that if it is parked and it's not obstructing traffic and it is in on a pervious surface, that it is okay. Which there was some discussion and debate about that because it can become cumbersome for your neighbors. So we talked about screens, maybe arborvitae or some other green screen so your neighbor doesn't have to look directly at the RV. That is something that I believe is an important element. And I made a joke at a city council meeting that, to me, I grew up on a 5-acre parcel out towards Amboy, and we parked everything, out there. Neighbors were far away. But the thing that always bugged me were blue tarps. You fling your tarp over everything, and I don't think I had the support to ban tarps. So.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We'll start with you, Ms. Topper, for this question. We're sure there's a question we don't know about. Would you please ask it and answer it? And your opponent will be asked to do the same.
Yes, that's a great question. A question that you don't know about. Well, I bet you know all the questions, but I'll just throw one out there. I would say a question would be, what is your vision for the West Barracks, which is a city-owned asset and is currently under redevelopment, including the post hospital, which hasn't had any renovation in ages. So what is your vision for the historic barracks? And now answering my own question, I would say that those historic buildings are a part of Vancouver's heritage and history. And I want to see in the next 4 years the city prioritizing renovating the beautiful post-hospital into a thriving arts center and having mixed use within that building. I think it is an underutilized asset that we could use as a tourism draw that could help increase additional revenue through sales tax, and it would really bring the historic site up to a whole new level. So the city-owned assets on Officers Row and specifically the post-hospital would be my focus.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Forsman, the same opportunity. We're sure there's a question we don't know about. Would you please ask it and answer it? And thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That's kind of a tough one. But I would say, off the top of my head, a question that you guys, some people in the audience might not know about is, do you know that the city of Vancouver fluoridates its water and has done so since 1960? And to answer that question, I would say yes, we do fluoridate our water. And what fluoridation does is it puts, what fluoride does is you swish it in your mouth to kill the bacteria, and that's why they say that it stops cavities from accumulating. So when you drink this water, it goes into your stomach, and it kills the bacteria in your stomach, which you need. You need this to help your body break down food and nutrients. And when you kill that, you have to rebuild it over time. And we might want to ask ourselves, is it okay for the city to be putting fluoride in our kids' drinking water, and water that we drink, and how do you feel about that? Thank you.
Thanks. Our last question will start with you, Mr. Forsman. Some public spaces in Vancouver, such as along roadways and public parks, could be more attractively maintained. How could this be accomplished, and how would the financing work?
Well, I would say I would look for areas that we can cut funding or allocate these funds to these areas. You know, I'm not sure what specific areas you're referring to, but I would just look to find areas where we're not using, where the resources aren't needed, and I would try to divert them into maintaining these areas along the roadways. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Ms. Topper, some public spaces in Vancouver, such as along roadways and public parks, could be more attractively maintained. How could this be accomplished, and how would the financing work?
We have started to address that issue. We've heard from many citizens who are driving home and there's weeds in the street medians that are taller than they are. And so they send photos, and they think, and they are correct, that it is the city's responsibility to maintain those medians. And one of the things that is always a struggle in terms of funding is the idea of bringing in volunteers to help, or doing street cleanup days where we can get people out with weed eaters and doing the work that they maybe want to do. But we have some barriers in regards to union contracts and some other labor things that will restrict what we can do with volunteer support. So through our transportation benefit district, we did hire 3 new full-time staff to really focus on maintaining our parks, turning on the sprinklers so the grass is green in the summer for kids to play, mowing it, making sure those weeds stay down, and then also getting in the street medians. But when you have over 1,700 lane miles to maintain across the city, 3 staff members are not going to go very far. So we need to continue to think about how can we increase our capacity for both parks and street median maintenance. And I don't have that answer yet, because a lot of times it turns to raising taxes, and so we're trying to find creative ways to do it. We are leveraging volunteers when possible, and we'll continue to make it a priority.
Thank you. We'll begin in your 1-minute closing statement and start with you, Ms. Topper.
Thank you, and thank you again for this opportunity. I've been a citizen who just wanted to make a difference and decided to run for office. And over the last 4 years, I've learned that a single voice with support from the community can truly make a difference. During my time on City Council, we were able to pass 3 new ordinances to protect vulnerable renters, helping people who are low income stay in their home and not be asked to move out for no cause. We were able to make sure people had more time if someone was going to raise their rent, so they could find enough money to stay in their house. I've stood up against the Vancouver Energy Oil Terminal, and I've spoken out against that project because I think it's the right thing to do for the future of Vancouver. And that's why I'm going to ask for your vote for re-election, because I want to continue this work on your behalf for the future of Vancouver and for its vitality, prosperity, and for future generations. I plan on retiring here in 40 years, maybe 35 if I'm lucky, and I would love this to be the place that my kids and grandchildren want to stay as well. So please, I ask for your vote. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to visit more.
Thank you. Mr. Forsman, your closing statement?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for allowing me to be here. And some of the reasons why I got involved in politics was because I seen that the government was burdening the public. So I got involved because I thought, if I'm here to look after the public, uphold our Constitution, and make sure our city ordinances aren't overreaching, then that was my duty as a citizen to stand up. Sorry I'm not better prepared on these questions. I just got them, but you know, things that are very important to me here are getting the homeless into homes, keeping people that are on the verge of losing their homes, keeping them in their homes, keeping, I guess, keeping the taxes low, and being a person that's going to vote against any tax increases on the people, because I know that more money in your pocket is better spent in our community, and who knows where it's going when you give it to government. So if I can get into office, I can see what's going on, I can root out any corruption, and I can protect your rights. That's what I'm here to do, and I appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Thank you, and let's thank both our candidates.